ice-bound chronicles of Einar Michelson. It was the winter of 1912, and I found myself ensconced in a remote cabin on the icy expanse of Greenland, a world where time seemed to stretch and twist like the frost-kissed boughs of the trees outside. My name is Einar Michelson, a name that, by the end of my journey, would echo through the halls of Danish history. But in that moment, I was merely a man caught in the throes of isolation, alongside my companion, Ivar Iverson. Our expedition had begun with high hopes and lofty ambitions. The goal was simple yet daunting: recover the map and journal of a previous expedition that sought to debunk the existence of Peary Sound. This was no mere academic endeavor. It was a matter of national pride. The United States had laid claim to parts of Greenland, arguing that it was divided by the Peary Sound, an assertion we intended to disprove. Little did I know then that the greatest battles would not be fought against nature or rival nations, but against the demons of despair and hunger that lurked in the shadows of our cabin. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, our situation deteriorated. The other members of our party, brave souls who had once shared in our dreams, fell victim to the harsh realities of our environment. One by one, they abandoned us, leaving Ivar and me to fend for ourselves. The cabin, once a sanctuary, became a prison of ice and silence. With dwindling supplies, we were forced to make unspeakable choices. The dogs that had pulled our sleds, once our loyal companions, became our only source of sustenance. I remember the first time we had to resort to such measures. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing the primal instincts that lay beneath our civilized exteriors. The taste was foreign yet familiar, a bitter reminder of our plight. Hunger gnawed at our spirits, and soon our minds began to unravel. Ivar and I would sit by the fire, our eyes glazed with the fever of starvation, chasing the shadows cast by the flickering flames, whispering of imaginary animals that danced just beyond our reach. Hallucinations became our only companions, and I often found myself lost in a world that was both enchanting and terrifying. Then there were the bears, great hulking creatures that stalked the periphery of our existence. With every crunch of snow, with every rustle in the underbrush, I felt the weight of their presence, a reminder that we were not the apex predators in this frozen wilderness. One fateful night, as I lay in my cot, I heard the low growl of a bear outside our cabin. Ivar and I sprang into action, hearts racing, adrenaline coursing through our veins as we brandished whatever weapons we could find. The encounter was brief and chaotic, but the fear lingered long after the beast had retreated into the night. In the midst of our struggle, a semblance of normalcy emerged from the chaos. A photograph hung on the wall of our cabin, a relic from a time before our isolation. It depicted 53 female students of a home economics school, their faces bright and full of life. We would often talk about them, imagining their lives, their dreams, and their laughter. The photo became a thread, tying us to a world beyond the ice, a world of warmth and humanity. As days turned into weeks, our conversations about the girls turned into something more personal. I had selected one girl, a vision of beauty named Naja Marie Heiberg Holm. Ivar, in his mischief, began to dedicate love songs to her, and soon enough, I found my heart inflamed with jealousy. He had picked 4 friends from the photograph, but I was resolute in my claim to Naja. I was furious when Ivar made light of my feelings, and our friendship was strained to the breaking point. For 2 days, I refused to speak to him, the silence between us heavy with unspoken words. The wind howled outside our cabin like a mournful spirit, a constant reminder of the desolation that surrounded us. I sat by the dimly lit fire, the flickering flames casting long shadows on the rough-hewn walls, and I felt a gnawing emptiness in my stomach. Days had blurred into one another, and I found myself lost in thoughts that spiraled like the snowflakes outside, endless and chaotic. Ivor had fallen into a restless sleep, his breath shallow, and I could hear the soft crackle of the fire as it struggled to maintain its warmth. I should have joined him, but sleep eluded me. Instead, I found myself staring at the shadows dancing on the walls, their shapes twisting and turning, morphing into grotesque figures that sparked my imagination. Suddenly, I thought I saw a movement outside the window, a flash of white against the endless expanse of snow. My heart raced as I leaned closer, hoping against hope that it was something more than a figment of my imagination. It could be a seal, perhaps, or even a polar bear. The thought of fresh meat made my mouth water. But as I squinted into the blizzard, I realized it was just a trick of the light. Disappointment washed over me, but the shadows inside the cabin grew more vivid, more alive. They began to take on forms, figures of men and women, their faces obscured but their bodies moving with purpose. I felt a strange compulsion to join them, to step into their world where hunger and fear did not exist.
"Join us, Einar,"
a voice whispered, sweet and inviting. I turned to see a woman standing in the shadows, her features blurred but her smile radiant. She wore a long dress that flowed like the snow outside, and I felt an inexplicable urge to reach out to her. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling. The cold air seemed to thicken around me, and I could feel the weight of despair lift, if only for a moment.
"I am the spirit of the Arctic. You are not alone,"
she replied, her voice echoing in the recesses of my mind. I felt a warmth spread through me, a fleeting sense of hope that seemed impossible in our dire situation. As I stepped closer, the shadows began to swirl around me, and I found myself surrounded by a gathering of figures. They were laughing, their voices a harmonious melody that filled the air. I recognized some of them, faces from the photograph on the wall, the 53 girls from the home economics school. They danced, their laughter ringing like bells, and for a moment, I was transported to a place where ice and hunger could not reach me. The vision shifted, and I found myself in a vibrant hall filled with light and warmth. The girls were preparing a feast, their hands moving gracefully as they arranged platters of food that overflowed with color. The aroma of freshly baked bread and sweet pastries wafted through the air, intoxicating and unbearable. "Eat, Einar," the woman urged, her voice now a gentle caress. "There is plenty for everyone." I reached for a piece of bread, my fingers trembling with anticipation. But just as I was about to take a bite, the vision shattered. The laughter faded, replaced by the harsh reality of the cabin. I was back in the cold, dark space, my hands clutching nothing but the rough fabric of my coat. Panic surged through me as I realized I was still trapped in this frozen prison. I could hear the faint echo of laughter fading away, and the warmth of the vision turned to ice. I staggered back, the emptiness in my stomach returning with a vengeance, gnawing at my insides. The shadows grew darker, now twisting into grotesque shapes that mocked me. Ivor stirred in his sleep, mumbling incoherently, but I could not shake the feeling that I was being watched. The figures loomed closer, their faces now twisted in agony rather than joy. They reached out with icy hands, grasping at my soul. "Leave me be," I shouted, my voice breaking through the silence of the cabin. I stumbled back from the fire, the warmth fading as the shadows closed in. I could feel the weight of despair pressing down on me, threatening to crush the last remnants of hope. With a desperate resolve, I turned to the window, the storm raging outside. The world beyond was a white abyss, but I felt a compulsion to escape, if only to find those visions again, to seek the warmth and laughter I so desperately craved. I opened the door, the icy wind biting at my skin, but I stepped out into the swirling snow, the darkness swallowing me whole. For a moment, I was lost in the storm, the howling winds drowning out my thoughts. But as I stood there, the cold biting into my bones, I realized the truth. The shadows may have been a product of my mind, but they represented the warmth of human connection that I had lost. I was not alone. I had Ivor, and together we would endure this madness. With newfound determination, I turned back toward the cabin. The shadows might haunt me, but they would not claim me. I would fight for my sanity, for my life, and for the hope of returning to the world where laughter and warmth awaited. As I stepped back inside, the fire crackled, and I felt a flicker of resolve ignite within me, a small flame against the encroaching darkness. These were the visions that haunted me, perhaps born of starvation, perhaps the result of altered states of consciousness. The veil between fantasy and reality had become alarmingly thin. Yet, even in our darkest moments, there were flickers of camaraderie. We shared stories, dreams, and plans for a future that felt increasingly distant. Ivor would recount tales of his childhood in Denmark, the fields he had roamed, and the laughter that had filled his home. I, in turn, spoke of my ambitions, of returning to Denmark as a hero, map in hand, ready to prove our claim over Greenland. As the months dragged on, our situation became dire. The frigid air seeped into our bones, and the rations we had painstakingly preserved dwindled to nothing. On particularly desperate days, we would venture outside, hoping to find any game that would sustain us. But the land was unforgiving. Each failed hunt chipped away at our resolve, and the specter of madness loomed ever closer. But just when it seemed that despair would swallow us whole, a rescue party arrived. I remember the moment vividly. How the sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden hue over the snow, illuminating the faces of our saviors. With tears streaming down my face, I realized that we were not lost to the world after all. We had survived against all odds, and our story would be told. Returning to Denmark was a whirlwind of emotions. I was greeted as a hero, the man who had braved the ice and emerged victorious. The maps I had recovered from the previous expedition proved that Peary Sound did not exist, and thus Greenland remained a Danish territory. Flags flew high, and the cheers of my countrymen echoed in my ears. Yet, amidst the accolades, my heart yearned for something more. It was at a celebration in my honor that I first laid eyes on Naja Marie Heiberg Holm in person. She was everything I had imagined, graceful, intelligent, and with a spark that ignited something deep within me. Our conversation flowed easily, and I felt a connection that transcended the trials I had faced in the Arctic. I knew then that my heart had found its home. In the months that followed, I courted Naja with fervor, weaving our story together like a tapestry. We laughed and danced, shared our dreams and fears, and built a bond that felt unbreakable. I had returned to a world that was vibrant and alive, a stark contrast to the desolation I had endured. Eventually, I asked for her hand in marriage, and to my delight, she accepted. Our wedding was a joyous affair, attended by friends, family, and even some of my fellow explorers. It was a celebration of love and resilience, a testament to the enduring spirit of humanity. As I stood beside Naja, I could hardly believe how far I had come. From the icy grip of despair in a cabin in Greenland to the warmth of love and companionship in Denmark. My story was not just one of survival, it was a narrative of connection, of finding light in the darkest of times. Years later, as I reflect on those harrowing months, I realized that the lessons I learned in that frozen landscape have shaped who I am. The bonds forged in adversity, the the strength found in vulnerability, and the love that blossomed against all odds. They are the true treasures I carry with me. And though the photograph of the 53 girls may have faded, the memories of that time remain etched in my heart, a reminder that even in the coldest of places, warmth can be found. If you liked this story, don't forget to subscribe to be notified about new ones. Thanks for tuning in.